I've just spent 2 full weeks driving the Kia Tasman. Finally, after years of waiting, enduring that tiresome naming campaign, the lame ads, after all those undisclosed junkets and half-baked road tests, it was finally my turn. I've had something big planned for the Kia Tasman, a towing test. But not just some irrelevant tow test where a manicured motoring journalist cosplays as a veteran towing expert by sticking a 3.5 tonne caravan on the back and taking absolutely no luggage with them at all. No, I wanted to do something big and realistic and helpful for consumers. In June 2026, next year, I will be taking part in the SHITBOX Rally, a 3,000 plus kilometre adventure from Mildura to Townsville via the Flinders Ranges and the Outback generally. The budget is a strict $1,500 and the requirement to join is raising $5,000 for the Cancer Council of Australia. If you don't know anything about fundraising, the first thing to know is that it's hard work, but not nearly as hard as fighting cancer. So to help me on my journey to raise $5,000 for the Cancer Council, I've been busy acquiring and preparing my draw card, the show-stopping beast I've dubbed the Millennial Falcon. Just look at her. Straight out of my 20s when Pitbull and Jaeger bombs were the night fuel and, you know, scraping through uni was a means to an end, while also begging for casual shifts at my local autobahn. Those were the days. With my charm and beg offensive set to max, auto expert John Cadogan agreed to assist me in performing some of the roadworthy work needed to get the Millennial Falcon ready to make the jump. The problem was, the automotive antichrist lives almost 1,000 kilometres away in Sydney,
Australia.
So I needed a noble steed capable of heavy towing, plenty of cabin space, and a big tray, and which was one of the most comfortable dual cab utes on the market. Enter the Kia Tasman, a ute with 0 runs on the board, the very low expectation to have adequate mumbo for such a task, and the face only a mother could love. Things will be. Alright. Oh. Don't twist the belt.
Continuity error. Insert China.
Got to change a nappy or whatever it may be. That's handy. I genuinely didn't think that was going to happen with space for family.
What day is it?
This, I thought, would be the perfect test. A towing assignment that is definitely not conservative, but certainly not so dangerous that it becomes unsafe, stupid, and equally irrelevant for consumers such as yourself. You know, people who might actually need to buy a dual cab ute in the near future. See, if you're in the market for a dual cab ute, but this is not your first ute, then there's a good chance you might dismiss the Tasman in favour of, I don't know, the Ford Ranger or Toyota Hilux. And that's okay, they're good utes. But if perhaps you're considering returning to a ute or getting one for the first time, then I think you should very seriously consider a Tasman for a few good reasons. Tasman is being heavily discounted, and it will continue to be discounted into 2026 when dealers start getting desperate to sell and move their 2025 plate stock. The powertrain, it's absolutely sensational to drive, and I'll get into that in detail in a minute. But that 2.2 litre diesel is reliable, frugal, grunty. It's got enough power, as I've discovered, and I will get into shortly. And then there's the transmission, which is also genius, and there is also more of that to come. It is also, without a doubt, the most comfortable dual cab ute in unladen ride quality, or lightly laden, which makes it wonderful for daily family transport, as well as having a massive tub. Not just in sort of payload conditions, but actual physical dimensions, because it's not always weight that you're carrying, it's weirdly awkward stuff. Last point of order here, for reasons you might be interested in or should be interested in a Tasman, is the interior is sublime. It's better than the Mazda BT50, and Mazda will not like to hear me saying that because their SUV interiors are the best among the mainstream brands, in my opinion. Okay, so the stage is/was set. A proper real-world towing assignment for the new Kia Tasman, a mission to raise money for the cancer research, and one hero prepared to risk it all, or something. Morning. How are ya? Have a good sleep? So, Kia Carnival. Right, so it's obviously the morning. I left this morning at 6:30 on the dot, right precisely when I wanted to leave, which was at 6 o'clock. I've just cleared the northern suburbs of the unequivocal best city in Australia. There are going to be dad jokes on this trip, and that's because I'm driving, well, this first half I'm driving probably closer to 900 k's to Sydney. But for now, I am clearing Melbourne, and I'm doing it, of course, in the Kia Tasman. I have a 1700 kilo BF Ford Falcon on a tandem axle car trailer. And you know what? I've got some things to say about this Kia Tasman. I think we're going to have some positive things to say. I will, of course, report the negatives. I will, you know, again, break with tradition in the Australian motoring journalism fraternity and give you both sides of the story. I will give you both the positive and the negative. But so far, I've had this Tasman for, I can't remember how many days. I'll put a number on the screen. It's too early to do thinking. I picked up the trailer last night from all the way across town. So I live on the eastern side of Melbourne, and I had to go all the way over to the western suburbs, as in couldn't possibly be any further away. But it was a great preliminary test because, firstly, the tandem trailer behind me is wider than the Tasman. So I can see wheel arch down my left mirror and wheel arch down my right mirror, which means I have to be constantly thinking about where I'm positioning the vehicle in the lane. For example, if there's a reel of a bundle of PVC piping on the side of the road, that's an expensive loss. So anyway, the Tasman itself is quite wide. When I say quite wide, we're talking a difference of millimeters compared to its so-called nearest competitor, the Ford Ranger, and yet the trailer is wider than it. So let's talk about curb weight. The curb weight of this is 2.3 tons, which is quite good considering I've got such a massive load on the back. So it's good for inherent stability, and it means that this vehicle can safely restrain the trailer behind me. That's what you want. But not only is it restraining, but it's quite capable of pulling this trailer, I've come to realise. Who would have thought the little diesel that could can. So I loaded up the Millennial Falcon onto a 600 kilogram car trailer with an ATM limit of 3.2 tons. I strapped it down, and at exactly 8 minutes past 6 in the morning, I set off. I spent an entire Friday driving about 1,000 kilometres to Sydney to visit the secret underground fat cave 2.0 of auto expert John Cadogan. The Tasman managed to tow this 2.3 tonne combination as far as Gundagai before I chose to refuel using the high flow diesel pump, because who can be bothered waiting for Toby and Shazza and Muzz to, you know, fill up their campers and their 4x4s and their hatchbacks. But I know for a fact that Tasman would have easily gotten as far as Goulburn or probably even closer to Sydney had I wanted to push that envelope. And that's a good 600-700 kilometres of driving. Probably closer to 800 if I'd wanted to be really conservative. Although I never really care about fuel economy, mostly because it's irrelevant to consumers, on this particular occasion it was genuinely impressive that after roughly 500 Ks and 5 straight hours of towing, Tasman was managing fuel economy of an empty 20-year-old Ford Falcon, ironically enough.
Shut up! That is the so-called driver distraction monitor. I'm not distracted, I'm paying attention, I'm watching the dials, I'm watching the vehicle, I'm checking my mirrors. I'm not distracted. Something that happens a lot on long journeys, big road trips like this, is you succumb to the roadside food problem. And because I'm such a badass and I want to defy the Australian Motoring Journalists Code of Conduct, I'm going to make it my mission today to avoid stopping to eat at various cholesterol high banquets. So I got up this morning at 5:15, left at 6:15, and it's only just gone. It's just gone 9 o'clock, and I'm about to have my first bite to eat for the day. I've gone like 3.5 hours without eating food. So I'm gonna tuck into my little bag here that I've prepared for myself. I'm gonna have a hard-boiled egg. Now, you'll notice in the back of the car here, lots of bags, lots of stuff. But in the front here is my food bags. Snacks and sandwiches and lunch and stuff. That's because I intend to only stop for fuel and to check the trailer and tyres and stuff. You might say, now Scott, there is such a thing called Oliver's and you can buy a vegan sandwich for $45 and I think they try and sell you some steamed beans or something. Now that's a great idea. But I happen to know that a kilo of green beans at my local greengrocer costs like $5. Why would I pay that same price for a handful of green beans disguised as McDonald's French fries? No, thank you. So I've just done about 486 Ks, well probably more like 500 if I include driving from home, and it's time to refuel after 5 hours and 20 minutes of driving. Still got a quarter of a tank left, and I could easily make it to gas, but I don't particularly feel like pushing it today. Just have to wait spot at Gundagai. Yay. You're about to witness is a motoring journalist putting fuel into a press car. Right, all done. Just to prove that I've kept up my bargain with myself. Goodbye tucker box or dog on box or what, box dog, whatever it's called. Just put $100 worth of diesel in. Off we go up to Sydney. And go! That was holding 5th gear. That's pretty good. It does alright. Didn't feel gutless doing that at all. Sure, had to crank back a couple of gears, but what vehicle wouldn't have to do that? Towing this kind of load. Not bad. So the end part of the day's journey meant navigating the treacherous roads of Sydney, and even in normal circumstances with a regular car, I hate driving in Sydney. What a sick, twisted idea for a road network. Here's a genius civil engineering idea. Expand a mountainous ridgeline goat track to 6 lanes, and call it the Pacific Highway. Brilliant, brilliant. On the following Saturday in question, John and I hit the tools, proving not only that I still had some apprentice type competence, I guess you'd call it, tucked away in the recesses of my brain, but also that John is an absolute master in the same way that, I don't know, Yoda made Count Dooku look like a 79-year-old Christopher Lee. Obviously it was CGI, but shh, we don't get into that. Having completed 2 of the primary tasks I needed guidance on, I saddled up the Millennial Falcon on the Saturday afternoon and drove it back to inner Sydney where I was staying, again down the Pacific Highway. On the Sunday, on the day I was supposed to be resting apparently, I left the trailer in the street where I was staying and sat down with John for an important discussion about what I'd learned in the first half of my epic 2,000 kilometre round trip towing with the Kia Tasman. You can watch our podcast conversation up here, where we also discuss a big revelation I had about the Tasman's rear end under towing. I'll get to that shortly. Fuel economy. At 5 AM on the Monday morning, I left Sydney to head south again
Only this time I wouldn't be taking the Hume Highway and instead made my bearing in Gippsland, to the little country town I grew up in. This is where I would leave the Millennial Falcon with an old mate of mine, the Chewbacca of Team Millennial Falcon. This would mean the Tasman would be towing the 2.3 tonne trailer all the way up and down over the snowy ranges. It would mean lots of long, steep, relentless inclines and even longer declines on the other side, and about 12 hours of continuous driving, pretty much. No rest for the wicked and no rest for the Kia Tasman, notionally. What I can tell you is that the Kia Tasman was running, towing, braking, accelerating, steering and pumping out tunes for those 12, 13 hours without missing a beat. Not once, from inner Sydney to Queanbeyan to Cooma to Bombala to Cairn River and back to Melbourne, did the Tasman give me any trouble. I'm talking about no questionable temperature gauge movements, no gearbox stupidity, no dead brake pedal, no gutlessness, well, almost no gutlessness, no weird noises or lights on the dash, and no question about whether it would be happy to do it all over again the next day. In total, during my entire 2 weeks with the Tasman, I drove over 2,600 kilometres. 2,000 of which was very heavy towing, very heavy towing, and 500 of which was around Melbourne. The fuel economy for my entire loan was an average of 12.6 litres per 100 kilometres. I know for a fact that that's the kind of fuel economy I used to get in my old BA Falcon in my 20s. You know, the one on the back of the trailer, but that was empty. And it had a 20-something year old with a lead foot in it. Anyway, for a 2.2 tonne dual cab ute to only drink 12.6 litres per 100 Ks with 2.3 tonnes behind, up to Sydney and back the longer way, and with stuff on board, like actual stuff, that seems astounding to me. When Cars Guide tested the Ranger V6 against D-Max a few years ago, they put a 2.8 tonne caravan on the back and got fuel economy of 19.5 and 18.6 litres respectively. Nonetheless, it was 20% more weight on the test, on that test that they did, but the Tasman managed 32 to 35% better fuel economy than the D-Max and Ranger. And that test was done with those utes completely unladen, which my Tasman was not. I had tools, luggage, gear with me. And in 2023, when Paul Marrick at Car Advice did a similar ultimate towing test, they did it with a 2,500 kilogram trailer. And again, they did it with a completely empty prime mover. That's the ute. Pulling their non-precious cargo around the old Holden Proving Ground, the Car Advice team found the Hilux Rogue consumed about 29 litres per 100 kilometres at a percentage change of 184% compared with its claimed economy. Now, on this, I need to make a point. Motoring journalists need to stop telling you this is what X vehicle's fuel economy should be and this is the figure we got. It has to stop. This claim, this wording and this premise that these motoring journalists set up to you is irrelevant and it's misleading. Car companies commit to fuel economy bench testing for comparison purposes. It's not a comparison to your typical lead-foot motoring journalist or Barry out on the road, right, on his daily commute. It's for comparison to other models in the same standardized bench testing so that you, the consumer, have a general understanding which one will consume the most fuel on average, roughly, approximately, in the same conditions, right? So Tasman, I got 12.6 litres per 100 Ks. I cannot go directly comparing what I got to what Paul Marrick or Matt Campbell did in their tests. That's because they're different tests, different variables, different conditions, and different engine sizes, different drivers. There's too many variables to make it relevant. What I'm doing is showing you the general fuel economy I got in my testing, which was substantially longer, harder, and I think far more realistic. And the number I got was much smaller and more relevant to you, I think, than what they did in their testing. So I'm not comparing those figures directly. I'm just saying that the variables are too numerous and too differentiating to be compared directly. What I can show you is that my tests were, from what I've seen of their testing, far more substantial and comprehensive, and the Tasman still returned better fuel economy while also performing the tasks required of it. I hope that makes sense. I think it does. It should. Look forward to your furious agreement and or disagreement in the comments below, especially if your name is Cat Mamble or Maul Parrick. Performance. Tasman shone. It performed. In all the overtaking, the long hills, the warm ambient air, the sketchy, broken and mountainous highways and byways of both the Hume and the Snowy, for over 2,000 kilometres of driving, it was excellent. Except there were two brief moments where the Tasman was at full chat and in Struggle Town. These moments happened here in the outskirts of Queanbeyan. Queanbeyan? Because the sat-nav, which had saved me in a pinch when my phone died that morning, sent me in that direction. It was quicker. The sat-nav took me away from the morning Monday rush of Fyshwick and instead took me through Mark Webber's hometown, where I navigated my barge through a roundabout on Yass Road onto Ellerton Drive. Ellerton Drive is a series of long, sweeping bends on a moderately steep hill at 80 kilometres an hour, where even the big trucks were struggling. Now, the Tasman did have the grunt to keep it all at the speed limit, but it was kind of giving her all she's got, Captain, sitting at about 3,500 RPM. But you know what? Expectations. Should I expect the Tasman to be able to blast up the hill with this particular load, or do I just expect it to keep going? Answer, it's the latter. And it did. Hooray for the Tasman. I cleared the hill, came over the other side, victorious, and then turned left onto Old Cooma Road. And oh dear. Don't click away. This is not an ad. I promise. I promise it's not an ad. So in 2026, I will be taking part in the SHITBOX rally. But to do so, I need to raise $5,000 for the Cancer Council of Australia. You know, biggest morning cuppa and all that sort of thing. What's better is SHITBOX rally, because cars are interesting and you get to see the world and not put on calories in sugary snacks and things at a morning tea. But here's the thing, right? I hate asking people for money in any capacity. So instead, I'm trying to give something back to you as a consumer by embarking on this epic Kia Tasman towing test, right? I spent hundreds of my own money on this review, including the trailer hire, although it was given to me at a discount rate by an absolute bloody legend, who knows who he is. Filling the Tasman with diesel twice. No, 3 times I filled the Tasman. Gundagai, in Sydney and in Can River. And I also had to buy my own new big heavy duty tie down straps to restrain the Millennial Falcon to the trailer. So please, if you get anything helpful from this video, I'd love it if you could 1, subscribe to Best Family Cars, and 2, click on the link up there or down here in the description. And that would allow you to donate to the Cancer Council by supporting Team Millennial Falcon. It's not going to me, it's going to the Cancer Council, and it will allow Chewbacca and I to participate in the Winter 2026 SHITBOX Rally. Thank you so much for your help. Old Coomber Road does not look steep on Google Maps, but it's anywhere from a 5 to 9% gradient according to research I did using ChatGPT. That claims to have used the Queanbeyan Palerang Regional Council's review of environmental factors - Old Coomber Road duplication, unquote. So basically it's a moderate to steep climb. And again, did I expect the Tasman to be accelerating ferociously up this hill on a foreign road while driving alone in a strange land and with a heavy trailer behind? No. Did I expect Tasman to be reliable and to get me to the top? Yes. Did it? Yes. Did I wish it had more grunt? Sure. At the cost of reliability? Absolutely not. Because here's the thing, right? For the other 99% of my driving and towing experience with the Tasman, I never felt it needed more than the 154 kilowatts it's already got. And then we get to the gearbox. There were a couple of occasions where I was deliberately being a bit of a goose and changing up a gear to see if the Tasman would be able to use that higher gear ratio up some of the sort of moderately long, kind of steep hills in regional New South Wales. You know, that really boring section in the middle. Typically, if it was just the Tasman, like the vehicle itself, and not the trailer behind, I've no doubt it would have been in that higher gear anyway, like a 6th or 7th or 8th gear. But it makes sense that it wanted the lower gear because that's the sign of a properly calibrated transmission and, you know, ECU and all that stuff, knowing which gear it needs and holding on to it regardless of the flesh sack in the driver's seat who thinks he knows better. Holding a lower gear is generally a good thing because it means it's found the sweet spot in the power band. That's what you want, right? What you don't want is a transmission hunting around, not sure which ratio to stick with. All this does is waste energy, it increases wear, and it's unrefined to drive. I think it probably also increases fuel consumption. Tasman was absolutely faultless in this regard. Even when coming down out of the mountains into Cann River, it would drop a gear on steep decline, so it wasn't all me with my foot on the brake, praying that there was going to be meat left on the pads at the bottom of the hill, kind of thing. It did really well. Given that this 8-speed transmission was under constant load for an entire day, pulling 2.3 tonnes from before sunrise until late in the afternoon with no rest and making what must have been thousands, tens of thousands of gear changes, I don't know. I was impressed. No lights, no noises, no ticks, no messages on the dash. 2 thumbs up. Suspension. The big revelation I had was that the Kia Tasman is not some half-baked engineering job. They've put a lot of effort into this thing and it shows. But one gripe that I have that needs resolving, both for me internally and I think the updated version, is around the suspension. What I noticed fairly early on in this epic towing test was that the rear end felt busy. What I noticed is that the rear bump stops are mounted to the top of the leaf spring. So leaf spring like that, bump stops here, and the chassis up here, which has a little box section to dampen the vibration. But these two components, the bump stop and the steel box, were touching through the whole trip, meaning the vibration was coming into the cabin every time I hit a bump or an undulation or a pothole, right? You can see how that would get tiring after 12 hours. So you can see here where the bump stop has been sort of polishing the steel box receiver on the chassis. What initially concerned me about this was that I only had 290 kilos on the tow ball, which I measured myself, and there was notionally another 60 kilos to go before I reached the maximum tow ball download limit. Now, given that the trailer weighs 2.3 tonnes, you might notice that yes, I should have about 250 kilos of tow ball download, which means on the trip up to Sydney, I had loaded the trailer a bit front heavy, and that's correct. But I prefer a slightly nose heavy trailer because that naturally puts my threshold for inducing sway much further away. And I know the vehicle can handle it because its curb weight is 2,223 kilos in the X-Line variant. On the trip back, I decided to reduce, or try to reduce, the tow ball download a little bit to take some load off those rear springs and the bump stops to see if that would help the ride, which it did a little bit. But after 12 to 13 hours on the road, nothing is comfortable, especially in a dual cab ute on Australian roads with 2.3 tonnes in tow. Now, to be fair to the Tasman here, towing is not some benign activity. I know the blue singlet towing brigade out there has this mindset that putting the biggest, heaviest thing on the back of your ute is awesome, but it's a very dangerous, uncomfortable, exhaustive assignment. I've done lots and lots of moderate towing, especially quite early in my driving career. In fact, my dad taught me how to tow a trailer when I was still on my learner's permit, which is actually illegal on the public road in Victoria. It probably is in other states, I haven't checked. But he did that for two reasons. A, because the law misses the opportunity to teach kids correct towing while they're being supervised, or so he thought. And B, because the country, in the high country where I grew up and when, towing trailers is essential. So I've towed cars on trailers plenty of times in the past, but this time I'm not on some empty back road. I'm on the national highway among trucks and families and utes and cyclists and every other flavour of risk factor. What I noticed about the Tasman is that the ride suffers with a heavy trailer on the back. But here's the kicker. So does every other ute. Why? Because towing is not what they're primarily designed for. Utes are designed for doing some towing, some off-roading, some load carrying, and also sometimes carrying people, and they can do it all at once. This is both their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. Dual cab utes are not designed to do this kind of heavy towing all day, every day. They can do it all day, every day, but that's not what they're specifically designed to do. The Tasman is designed to do a little bit of everything in a reasonably competent way. But typically for utes, this excludes being comfortable when empty or near empty. Where other utes are pretty terrible to drive when they're empty or near empty, the Tasman is hands down the most comfortable dual cab on sale right now in Australia when lightly or moderately laden. The mistake many ute owners make is thinking that maxing out the payload and towing and passenger limits is a perfectly rational thing to do. But that's only because they haven't encountered, I guess, the circumstances in which everything can go horribly wrong. Meaning confirmation bias is telling them it's cool and normal to connect a 3-ton caravan, load up the accessories, fill the seats with kids and chuck everything but the kitchen sink in the trailer and head off to Narooma or Airlie Beach or Malakuta or wherever and think it's all going to be fine. It's fine to do that, but your expectations of the vehicle must adapt. You cannot expect it to brake or accelerate or swerve or grip the road the same way it does when half empty. So yes, the ute is a compromise. The Kia Tasman is an engineering compromise, just like Ranger, Triton, Hilux, B250, etc. The Tasman's ride quality suffers when you put a 2.3 tonne trailer on the back, just like every other ute. But when it's just you and the missus heading out to the movies for date night, it's the best one to drive and be driven in. And, you know, whatever else might happen in the back seat. Interior. Yes, yes, yes. The knurling on the door handles feels like I'm gripping my steel mace for a workout. The seats are so comfy and the lumbar support after 12 hours is the storage is abundant. The extendable sun visors actually block out the sun through the side window. The back seats adjust for humans with actual spines. There's individual top tether points for installing child restraints properly. The neoprene pockets with the chunky zippers are tough and good for wet togs. The underseat storage exists. There's acres of legroom and headroom. I can deactivate the lane keeping with the holding of a button on the steering wheel. Oh, the steering wheel. Okay, it is square, but that's okay. I soon forgot about it, to be quite honest. And actually, I did find it kind of useful for one particular thing. Roll tape. Reversing a trailer is a dark art of driving. I can do it very well and pride myself on being able to do it just like reverse parallel parking. This is that the tongue sits out nice and far from the bumper, which is good. The trailer plug is within easy reach. There's no bending down and crawling underneath. It's bang right there, easy to access. The square steering wheel kind of helps when I have my hand on 12 o'clock and I just need to make micro inputs to tweak the trailer's trajectory over my shoulder, right? But sometimes on a round steering wheel, you need to sort of slide your hand left or right while continuing to look out the back if you're, making bigger turns with the trailer. And this is where it's easy to lose track of where top dead center is, because sometimes it's sort of round with no reference point and your hand slides down a bit and you miss that that reference point, right? But Tasman's tiller, being square, means you can find that top dead center point quite quick and maneuver quickly so that you stop annoying everyone in the traffic building up either side of you. Now, auto expert John Cadogan disagrees with me, but that's allowed, I guess. Last words. The Tasman's tray is massive. The adjustable anchor points for strapping stuff down are robust and clever in the tub. The DC plug outlet is great for hooking up a battery charger or your phone or the communal job site doof machine. The damped tailgate makes me sad because I can't slam it like I used to with the B250 and Triton, which of course means that the latch and the hinges are going to last longer. Yay for durability. The driving position is excellent and it allows me to, look down on other utes and 4x4 drivers. The back seats are the best in the segment for comfort and function, fitting child restraints among the dual cab utes. I did actually find a use for the wheel arch storage box in the rear to use as a surface to mount my GoPro and small rig arm to, like a clamp. But honestly, I completely forgot it was there until the end. But it is hinged the wrong way, so you're packing up as the rain starts, you're closing it with the water inside in a sealed box, which is also black and matte, so it's going to absorb the sunlight and warm up your wet ropes and gloves and straps and empty Nippy's iced coffee containers. Talk about breaking the mold, Kia. I thought that was funny.
Made myself laugh though.
As for the looks, I'm disappointed, but I'm kind of over it as well. Like we've all said it. Okay, I'm disappointed it looks like Sid and not Diego, or the Photon Tunland, or the Kia Carnival, or even the old Kia Sorento, or this, or this, or this, or this. This would have done nicely. You could have done that. Hell, even this. But seriously, when you're driving it, you can't see the front, and if you really mean business, you're going to spend most of your time looking at the back end, and the rear end of the Tasman is the business. And when it comes to buying a dual cab ute for work and play, it's the back end that really matters. Remember that nauseating naming campaign thing that was going on that they did for Tasman? Like anybody cared. Guess what? I found the unofficial draft list of names that they had to sort through back at head office. At least I think it's real. The guy at the airport told me they were genuine, straight from some guy named Raymond Reddington.